this video, we're going to have a look at how to calculate the total surface area of a trapezoidal prism. In the question, we have a prism that is 25 centimeters high and has a trapezoidal base whose parallel sides are 8 centimeters and 12 centimeters long and are 10 centimeters apart. The question asks to construct the net of the prism and then calculate the total surface area of the trapezoidal prism. So the first thing we should do is to draw a diagram of the 3D trapezoidal prism. This will help us to be able to draw the net of the trapezoidal prism as required in the question. So the diagram shown is a trapezoidal prism. You can see the trapezium at each end of the prism. This 3D diagram is going to help us to draw our net. Now when we start drawing the net of a prism, the best place to start is the base. And the base of our prism is a trapezoid. So we will draw a trapezium to start off our net. So now we've got our trapezium to start off our net. We can now look at the shapes that come off of each side of the base or each side of the trapezium. And for a trapezoidal prism, all these sides coming off of the trapezium base are going to be rectangles. So in total, there is going to be 4 rectangles coming off of each 4 sides of the trapezium that we'll now add in to our net. So now we have all 4 rectangular sides joined onto the trapezium. We have one more shape to add in, and that is our trapezium base at the other end of the prism. And we can join that on by adding it on to one of the rectangular sides. Now my net for my trapezoidal prism is complete. I have got 6 sides, being the 4 rectangular sides coming off each side of the trapezium, and the 2 trapeziums that are the base of the shape. So now that I've got my basic net, I can go ahead and add in the measurements onto my diagram and onto my net. Adding in the measurements will then allow me to go ahead and calculate the total surface area of the trapezoidal prism. So we'll start by adding in the measurements from the question onto the 3D diagram. And the first measurement I know is that the height of the prism is 25 centimeters. Now the height of the prism is going to be the length in between my 2 bases, so in between my 2 trapeziums. So marking that onto my diagram, it is going to be 25 centimeters from my first trapezium at the front to my trapezium at the back. The next measurements in the question is that the parallel sides are going to be 8 centimeters and 12 centimeters long. So they're talking about the parallel sides on the trapezium base. So I can go ahead and add them in. So the top side is going to be 8 centimeters and the bottom side is going to be 12 centimeters. And then the last measurement from the question that I can go ahead and add into my diagram is that those 2 sides are going to be 10 centimeters apart. So I can go ahead and add that in. So 10 centimeters from here to there. So that is all the measurements from my question that I've now added onto my diagram. The next step is going to be to go and put those measurements onto the net. So starting with my trapezium base, the 2 parallel sides are going to be 8 centimeters and 12 centimeters. And the height in between those 2 lines is going to be 10 centimeters. So I can mark that into my trapezium. Now both my trapeziums are going to be the same, so I don't need to add that into the second trapezium. Next is going to be to add in the measurements for the rectangles. Now each rectangle is going to have the same length, and that is 25 centimeters. So I can go ahead and add that in to each of my rectangular sides. Now to complete the measurements, I need to go ahead and add the widths of my rectangular sides, and those widths are going to equal the length of my 4 sides of the trapezium, because they're all joined up to those sides when the 3D diagram is formed. So I can go ahead and add in 2 of those measurements, being the 2 sides that join onto the parallel sides of the trapezium. So So this one is going to be 8 centimeters and this one is going to be 12 centimeters. And we can see that by the way we draw the net. The other two rectangles are going to be the length of the sides, the diagonal sides of the trapezium. We haven't been told those sides yet, so we need to go ahead and calculate them. So the best way to calculate them is to use a little bit of Pythagoras. So the trapezium can be broken up into smaller shapes. So if I add a line down there and a line down there cutting off the ends, I form a rectangle into triangles. Now that triangle is going to be a right angle triangle, with my unknown side being the hypotenuse. So I need to calculate the length of my other two sides to be able to calculate the length of my hypotenuse. So I know that the height of my triangle is going to be 10 centimeters because it is equal to the height of the trapezium. The length of the base, I need to do a quick calculation. So the base measurement is going to be 12 minus 8, which is my two parallel sides. And then I need to divide that by 2 because I have two triangles. So 4 divided by 2 equals 2. So the base of my triangle is going to be 2 centimeters. So now that I have got both of my smaller sides of my right angle triangle, I can go ahead and calculate the hypotenuse. So c squared is going to equal to a squared plus b squared. Substituting in my values, it is going to be 10 squared plus 2 squared. So c squared is going to equal 104. So c is going to equal the square root of 104. So my hypotenuse is going to equal 10.2 centimeters. So both of my sides of my trapezium is going to equal 10.2 centimeters. So now I can go ahead and finish adding that into my net. So 10.4 centimeters there and 10.4 centimeters there. So now I've got all the measurements on my net that I need. I can go ahead and calculate the total surface area. To calculate the total surface area from the net, I can find the area of each individual shape and then add them together. So to help me with my calculations, I'm going to go ahead and label each of my sides. So A, B, C, D. Now I don't need to label my other two shapes because they are the same as the other shapes that are already been labeled. So my bottom trapezium is going to be the same as A, and my side rectangle is the same as D. So I don't need to perform separate calculations for those. I can use the calculations for A and D. So now I can go ahead and start doing my each individual calculation. So the area of A, which is a trapezium, so A plus B times height divided by 2. Substituting in my measurements, my A and B value is going to be 8 and 12. So 8 plus 12 times my height of 10 divided by 2. So that is going to equal 100 centimeters square. Moving on to B, so the area of B, being a rectangle, is going to be length times width. So 12 times 25. So the area of B is going to equal 300 centimeters squared. Area of C, which is also a rectangle, so that is again going to be length times width. So it equals to 8 times 25, which equals to 200 centimeters squared. And finally, area of D, which is equal again to length times width. So 10.4 times 25, which is equal to 255 centimeters squared. So now I've got each of my individual area. I can go ahead and add them all up to calculate my total surface area. Now before I do that, I just might add each of those onto my net. So A is 100 centimeters squared, B is 300 centimeters squared, C is 200 centimeters squared, and D is 255 centimeters squared. So my final step is to calculate the total surface area. The total surface area is going to equal 2 times the area of shape A, being my trapeziums, plus area of shape B, plus area shape C, plus 2 times area of shape D. So substituting in my values, 2 times 100, plus 300, plus 200, plus 2 times 255. So that adds up to 1,210 centimeters squared. So the total surface area of my trapezoidal prism is 1,210 centimeters squared, and I completed that calculation by drawing the net, calculating each individual side of the net, the area of each individual side, and then adding all of the individual areas together to get total surface area.